Meets World.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bro Meets World.
Your boy Meets World Fancast.
Yeah.
I'm Siege.
And I'm Tony Curtis. How are you?
Ooh, I like it when you go down with the deep voice.
Hey, sometimes
After
you just got to
hours.
pull it out.
Exactly.
Quiet storm.
A quiet storm. Love it. I can tell y'all right now, y'all not gonna like me this episode. Y'all just not gonna like me. I'm saying it now. I'm letting y'all know. You
know what?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
When I knew when this episode was coming along that there would be some talking points that we would have to hash out. And I'm excited to get into it.
I was like, oh, they ain't gonna like me. And that's okay. You ain't gotta like me. We ain't gotta be friends.
Siege, right before we jump in, I just want to quickly say, and I don't want to, this doesn't need to be an obligatory thing we do every podcast, but I am loving the Pod Meets World podcast so much.
Let's get to the morning announcements thing. Let's do it.
For morning announcements, it's not really so much that there's anything specific that I want to talk about. They just had Lance Bass on to talk about his relationship with Danielle Fishel and how they were dating and how he came out gay and how they're making like a movie about it, by the way. Like, really, this whole thing. Obviously Danielle recently said that she had a crush on Ryder Strong throughout the filming of the series, which is like huge news. But more than anything, I'm just loving getting to know these people who I had such a connection with as the characters, getting to know them as Ryder, Will, and Danielle. Like that has been such an enjoyable experience as a lifelong fan of the show to know that they're just actors who showed up to set. Like they were just trying their best. Like they were just like, to them, this is just a part of their life in such a way that, when they kind of reflect on their stories, they have a hard time like separating what's on the show from what happened behind the scenes. But I just think that's it's just interesting to know that these are just child actors, at the end of it, that just had this extraordinary experience. And I don't know, I can't recommend it enough to our listeners to as you listen to your Bruh Meets World podcast, maybe throw on the Pod Meets World podcast and check out what's going on with the cast, because again, loving the conversations that are being had.
Absolutely. And like this brings me like a few things. One, it reminds me of something I think Frankie Muniz said. It may have been him, it may have been someone else, but it was a child actor who was talking about his memories. Just like he's like, we did so many crazy things on set. I don't know what was a dream or what was like real life, because like when you're a child actor, you're on set, like the idea of like, did we really dress up in tiki wear and have a game show where I wore a giant fake head on my head, or did I dream that? Was that a fever dream? You know what I mean? Like there are plenty of things where you're like, oh yeah, like as a person, as an individual, where this isn't your real life, this has to be really crazy, because you definitely pretty much do have like two sets of memories. You have like the memories that are yours, and then the memories that were like constructed for someone else.
100%. And people have such a deep relationship with this perception of you that isn't quite you, and they talk about that a little bit. One thing I just want to touch on real fast before we get into the episode is that Ben Savage, we got to talk about it.
Yes, we do have to talk about this. All of this is part of my morning announcement, so I love that you're bringing it up. But I mean,
you're the West Hollywood native, so maybe you should be the one to discuss this.
So you know what? I will say this. Not surprised that he is running. For those of you who don't know, he is running for councilman of West Hollywood here in California, and it is a tough thing to witness, because I will say that politically, Ben Savage and I don't align, but it is also very interesting to see someone who you've pretty much been following for years run for office. So it's kind of like this thing to where I feel like a lot of name recognition will be in his favor. However, I also know that for a lot of people in the area, we look at policy more than we look at anything else. But that being
Sure.
said, it's just like, name recognition goes a really long way. Um, me and him don't align politically necessarily, but like I also don't think that he's as far to a place to where I'm like actually boycotting his
Yeah.
campaign. So yeah, it's very interesting. I was talking to a friend about this because of course, as with any Boy Meets World news, like everyone sends things to me the moment like that they happen. And I was saying to them, I was like, I'm not surprised, because they were like, oh, what do you think about this policy? I was like, I'm not surprised. And the more that we learn about Ryder and Will and Danielle, it becomes very, very obvious to me why like they all kind of collectively regularly meet, and Ben is always kind of off to the side. All that being said, I still appreciate and enjoy these characters. I, like you, love to learn more about like the real people, because I do think there is something. I mean, we've had all of our childhood heroes really turn out to be complex individuals. So I think it's really
Sure.
important for us to continue to separate a character from the actor who plays that character.
100%. And I have to say the same thing. Like the politics don't really align with Ben, but I do kind of appreciate this idea of someone like him who is taking the effort to dream, try and do good in whatever ways he can,
Yeah, yeah,
and one of the things I appreciated the Pod Meets World, they did a few episodes of just Q&A. And one of the things that Ryder and Will were talking about was how that on the set, they would have these really extreme political debates, religious debates, and just kind of arguing from all sides because it was such an assortment of different
yeah,
views on
yeah,
set. And they said sometimes that would make people uncomfortable. But for Will and Ryder, like especially the two of them, they would go back and forth a lot. And they were like, you know what? Like we've honestly changed our opinions based on the other person just making a better argument and just like seeing
yeah.
something from their point of view. And I thought that was really interesting as well. So just as the show kind of like lets out little bits of politics and a little bit of like religious views, like it's interesting to know that there was discussions happening behind the set, behind the scenes as well about all of those things.
Continuing our morning announcements, we've got so much feedback from you guys from our last poll from the last episode,
Oh, do we?
and I just want to remind everyone we love it when you give us feedback. And T, do you want to hit them with, because I pretty much knew where we were, but I'm excited to hear.
No, okay. So we asked you guys on social media and we gave a poll about like, hey, if you were Rachel, would you go and to the laundry room with Eric and test the sexual boundaries of your relationship? And you guys overwhelmingly decided that you would not do that.
Yeah, exactly.
75% of you on our Spotify poll said, no way, men be crazy. So there's a fourth of you guys out there that would still take the chance, and that's a lot of
I will
people.
say one of the most common comments that I saw was people being like, "Oh, but it's Eric," and it's just like, yeah, you don't know that. And a lot of y'all are willing to take chance. Like I'm learning some things. I now see why people go missing.
Well, I will say that like Netflix has made me a different person in terms of how I trust people. Like this is a new era where like I mean there was stranger danger in the 90s, don't get me wrong, but the perception of this person is harmless was a thing that I don't know, I feel like was a lot more frequent back in the day than it is now.
Well, so here's the thing. It was, and people were not harmless. Like what I'm
It's very
saying
true.
is women watch true crime for a reason. It's because all of these stories happened on a regular basis. And
Hmm.
who was it? It was the roommate. It was the guy across the street. It was the guy in your class that you knew every day. Those were the people. It was not so stranger danger. It's the ones that you know.
I also think that our idea of what like college white boys are capable of has changed dramatically since the time of this episode. So
yeah. I mean, absolutely. Oh, one thing I did want to say, I want to hit on this a little bit before we get into the episode, which is that a lot of people commented on the fact that Maitland Ward now has a career as an adult film star, and they were like, "Oh, very funny how like you're making a big deal about this, considering the line of work that she went into." Now, first of all, we're not going to go there. We're just going to say that we do not demean anyone for their job choices, especially because sex work is work. But then, in additional, just because you choose to become an adult film star willingly does not mean that you throw out any chance in the past of having sympathy for your actions. Like, I just think it's very weird that people are like, oh, you have a really big problem with her doing this now, considering what she ends up doing in the future. And you're like, I want you to explain to me how those things are related.
Yeah, and just also just I mean, in the context of everything, it's a completely different situation. She is purposely trying to trick him into thinking that she's into something that she clearly is not interested in, versus it just being something of her own agency. So it's just a different conversation.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Should we just do the tell me about it?
Yeah. Okay. Let's. I'll leave it up to you. Let's get into this.
I'll say this. I don't have really a tell me about it written out. I'm just going to kind of.
Okay.
Tell us about it. Shawn and Angela call it quits. Cory finds out that their friendship was shit, while Fenny learns that maybe that teaching will stick.
You know what? For on the fly, that's really good. I like it on the fly.
I included all the storylines.
Yeah, you did.
I tried.
You did really good. Okay. So for those who are following along, this is season 6, episode 4, Friendly Persuasion. After she and Shawn call it quits because he wants to meet new people, Angela shuns Cory's offer for support, claiming that they were never really friends in the first place. But after Cory pursues her in a co-ed bathroom, which he's previously been too terrified to enter, Angela confesses that she still has feelings for Shawn, pledging Cory to keep her secret between friends. In a B storyline, Eric encounters Mr. Feeney in his class as a student, but the presentation that Feeney and Rachel make on free will versus environment convinces the dean that Feeney can only function in his present environment as a professor. I have thoughts. But before I get into my thoughts, because there is a lot that we can go in with this episode, I'm going to ask TC for you to give me your first thoughts.
You know, first impressions of this episode are they do this thing with Cory in this story where they're like, oh, he just really, really wants to be Angela's friend. But I'm just like, does he, or does he just hate the fact that someone does not like him?
And that part.
That's kind of the bigger part, to the point where he kind of crosses a bunch of boundaries in order to like force it. Whatever, we'll get to it. And again, my point to last week, they could not wait to bring Feeney back into teaching. They didn't let us skip a beat. They were just like, all right, that last episode he came back to Philly. This episode, he goes from student to teacher. It's just, and I think literally like there's no transition. I think like in the few episodes, he's just teaching. Like we never see him like start again or talk about teaching college, or I think it
put
just
in an application.
So there's that.
Buy a new briefcase. Like none of these things.
None of it. Just so, you know, those are my first impressions of it.
I'll say, like, we will get into the Feeney thing in a little bit, but I will say that, like, you have 22 episodes. You couldn't do, like, Feeney getting back into the groove as a whole episode. Like, this is where, I mean, like, again, maybe we're a little bit spoiled with streaming and people wouldn't have been interested in doing that from week to week. But, like, we've done crazier things. An all Feeney episode, I don't know if that would have been the worst thing, especially considering how much we as a generation are attached to Feeney. You know what I mean?
You know what? I almost feel like Feeney needs to count his lucky stars that he's even being included, because none of the other adult cast seems to be a regular of the season. Like Feeney's
Nope.
the only one that's left. So it's
Very good
like
point.
it's interesting that they chose to like, no, we need at least Feeney as like a pillar of sorts if we're going to get rid of the rest of these adult characters. But to your point, like the way that they bring him in feels like it's for the children. It doesn't feel like it's for him.
Exactly. Okay, so that is our B storyline. We're gonna stick with our A for a little bit, which is this whole situation with Shawn, Angela, and Cory. To be honest, I will say it's very interesting because for years at this point in time, we have seen Shawn insert himself into Cory and Topanga's relationship.
Totally.
So it totally makes sense and tracks that Cory would also insert himself into Shawn's relationship. Like that makes sense, and that would have been a very interesting way to go about it. But let's just start from the very, very beginning of this episode.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Which is they are at a college mixer. Everyone's supposed to be hanging out. Cory and Topanga are like they are not under Cory's parent supervision, so they are like just making out all the time.
They are
very on track.
No. They are dry humping in the middle of the student union. Let's be clear.
Very on track for Cory where he's at this point in time. Makes sense. Shawn, however, is just like, oh, you guys, we're supposed to be meeting new people, which at first it's like, okay, this is what I was talking about when I said that the Shawn that I know would be excited about college.
Totally.
Like, that's where I was like, okay, cool. We're getting there where Shawn's like, new environment, new people, all of this. But then what happens is Shawn is like, we should be out meeting new people. Let's go. And Angela's like, yeah, I'm right with you. And then this girl comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Cameron. First of all, there's a lot of things going on. She goes, hi, I'm Cameron. And Shawn's like, oh, hi, I'm Shawn, and this is my friend Angela. And the moment he said, this is my friend Angela, I was like, excuse me?
Wow.
Excuse me?
It was like the look on her face, too, was like,
excuse me?
What?
Not after you just told me you ready to meet new people. Like, I'm still currently your girlfriend. We didn't have a conversation. This is just you mistreating me in front of somebody at this point in time. So they like play it up for Angela as if Angela's, or at least Shawn, I'll say Shawn's response is as if Angela's overreacting when she's like, oh, I'm just your friend. And he's like, no, my girlfriend, my bad. And then Cameron very much does come up and she's just like, oh, y'all together? And the way she said that, I was like, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
Because Cameron is too close to Karen. And I'm seeing what I'm seeing.
I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Yeah. You know, it was really hard for me to like not think about the fact that like there was almost, I don't want to make it a race thing, but like the fact that Cameron was so white.
Karen came up specifically and said, oh, you two are together? And for those of you who think like we're reading too much into this, reminder, there is a reason why Shawn and Angela are such a big deal to our generation. Yeah. They are literally one of the first interracial couples on television, especially for our demographic. So for them to have a white Will girl Smith's come aunt. Up, yeah, for them to have a white girl come up to Shawn and be like, oh, y'all are together, was to say that she was like, wouldn't have thought that was a thing. It is specifically saying what is being said without saying it.
And I mean, like, I can't imagine anyone saying anything other than what Angela said, which is, you want to meet new people and I'm not new people. So you tell me what that means. And I'm just like, yeah, please tell us what it means. And the thing that's strange about it from just like a character perspective is that with so much changing, like I get the idea that Shawn wants to meet new people, but like with Cory and Topanga being like engaged, you would think that like he would want to hang on to some kind of consistency or something. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like them breaking up is a natural part of just going to college with your high school partner, and I'm sure that's happened more times than I can count. But it seems like if they really thought about what's supposed to be happening with Cory and Topanga, to me it would make sense for maybe Angela to be the one being like, "Oh, let's meet new people," and Shawn just being like, "Wait, what? Like, I need this now." Like that to me would have been more interesting.
There's a lot because a few things are going on right now. One is that I agree with you where it's just like the dynamic is a little like I understand from Shawn's perspective. Let's just take it from Shawn's perspective. He hasn't actually been in a relationship this long.
Yeah.
And Shawn is used to being kind of a player. And Shawn is used to being able to play the field, and he is in a new area. Like it was one thing when he was in high school and he had dated every girl in high school. So finding Angela, finding one that he's compatible with and like sticking with that. Yeah, because he's ran through everybody else. And at this point in time, he's like, this is the best match for me. The idea of him going to college, seeing new options, wanting to like see where that goes, all very reasonable. However, again, we don't even really give that the weight in the conversation in the time that it needs. It's just him being dismissive of his relationship, one that they had us invest in, and they almost put all of the weight of that on Angela because Shawn is just like, yo, it was what it was. And let's not make a big deal out of it. 5 seconds later, we see him with the racist white girl.
With Karen, yeah. No, and honestly, like, it makes sense for what we know about Angela. She's like, dude, I was afraid to get hurt, and I told you that when we got into this, that like, hey, I don't get into serious relationships. Like, I opened myself up to you. And for you to be like, oh, it's all casual, like, let's just take a break. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, what was that whole shit about that we did last season? Like, we're at the restaurant. Like, what was that? Like, I thought we were trying to have something more than just something casual. So I can see why Angela feels this way, and it's kind of strange that Shawn does it. Honestly,
it is strange that Shawn does it. But again, I'm just saying I'm not surprised when we come back to it. Shawn is a white man. White men be oblivious, and it is very interesting that Cory seems to value the Shawn and Angela relationship more than Shawn does.
Yes.
And I know that his motivations are because Cory likes things to be in a certain order and he likes balance. And Shawn having a girlfriend actually just makes his life easier because then he's not tempted. Because if we are looking back, anytime Shawn is single and Cory's committed, Cory tends to be like, well, what's going on over there? So Shawn being committed means Cory is more committed, and he just got engaged, so he needs Shawn to be locked down.
That's a very interesting point. Like him hearing about all Shawn like hooking up with all these college girls is not going to be good for him in this situation. We've already been through this in seasons 3 and 5. So
he's like, I need you to lock it down.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is that Shawn's dedication to Cory and Topanga makes sense for what we know about Shawn's character. This is the only consistent relationship he's ever seen or really been involved with. So for Cory to feel like, wait, you and Angela broke up? No, this can't be. You guys are meant for each. It was kind of strange because I didn't know that Cory had anything tied up into their relationship at all. Like that hasn't been set up really. So,
but I would say what it is exactly what we just talked about.
Yeah,
it's from a selfish perspective, and I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with us, and they're like, "No, he cares," and it's like, no. If you look at Cory's actions, his actions throughout this, it has very little to do with Shawn's happiness, very little to do with Angela's happiness, and everything to do. Like he says, I'm doing it because you're my friend. However, he didn't even know that they were broken up.
Well, yeah, if we could just go back a little bit, because there's a scene I really want to talk about where he finds out that they broke up. He's about to go, like, Shawn's about to go into the co-ed bathroom, and Cory's still on his men and women go into the same bathroom. That's freaky. Yeah. There's also the scene where like this guy's about to go into the bathroom.
Oh,
After
I wanted to talk
Topanga,
about that. I wanted to talk about
and
that.
he says, "I'm going to take a shower and meet chicks." So again, people are fucking in this bathroom, guys. And to prevent like him from going in, Cory steals the towel off of him. He goes in bare naked, and then Topanga and Shawn both walk out as if they've seen the biggest dick in their life. What's
Yeah,
happening on the
yeah,
show?
yeah. So a few things. One, I did enjoy that moment. It's a very fun moment because the idea of this guy, the guy never returns for his towel.
No.
He's just in there. He's just like, yo, you saved me some time.
Yeah.
And then Topanga comes out and is like, wow. And you're like, okay, that could mean anything. But then 5 seconds later, Shawn comes up and he's like, wow. And I was like, oh, good for him. Good for dude with towel. But
I
also,
just love people are just naked in this room, in this open bathroom space, and it's fine. I wanted
to talk about this because I asked my fiance, I was like, he was watching it with me. I was like, do you know of a place that does this? And he said, UC Santa Cruz did have this type of setup. They had co-ed bathrooms and co-ed showers. And I was like, how did that work? And he was like, it just did. Like, it was just something that it worked. People worked around it. And I was like, okay, so this is kind of based on someone's real life experience. It's a little bit more than Ally McBeal. This is pretty much, I guess, what they did experiment with. But at the exact same time, he was like, I was 17. I don't know why anyone would think I was mature enough to be doing this.
Totally. And it's really interesting too. I know we're gonna get into the breakup. This is a really interesting moment where they kind of backpedal, where Shawn says something like, "Oh, there's naked girls in there," and then Cory says like, "Oh, what do you care? You have your own naked girl. I mean, she has the potential to be naked one day," as if to say like, "No, they're not fucking ABC. We didn't say that they were fucking. Like, we're gonna backpedal on that." I just thought that was really interesting that he had to clarify she hasn't been naked yet, but she has the potential to one day.
We're going to get there, and again, as I said, you guys will not like me this episode, but I know this, and it's fine. It's fine. Okay, so we just had Shawn it's kind of Shawn's pattern to move on quickly when he is kind of like done with something for
the rubber band scene.
Yeah, the past is in the past, in the rubber band scene. I do like there is some character continuality here, i.e. the idea that Cory would think that the rubber band was for him.
It's a little present for me.
For him to be a little excited about the rubber band and all those other, all very on track for Cory. Shawn being the cool one who understands how things go and needing to
Shawn calls him the rubber band man, and I was just like, is that where that term comes from?
I mean, who knows? I don't know. Someone look it up for us. But anyway, I was like, this all kind of tracks. However, we come out of the bedroom and Cory's putting it on and Angela shows up and it's just kind of like, oh, wait. Even before that, Topanga comes in and she's like, oh, did you know? He's like, did you know about this? And Topanga's like, yeah, they broke up. They seem both to be okay with it. You're both my friends. I respect you. Topanga seems to understand that people are going to be people. You got to let them make their own decisions.
Yeah.
However, from this point to the rest of the episode, Cory does not abide by that mentality. Not at all. You don't let people make their own decisions. If you feel like you know what's better for them, then you have the right to impose yourself on them until they do what you want them to do.
This was kind of similar to what we saw, and I think that's called the Things Change episode of season 5, like towards the end when they closed Chubby's, where just like Cory just has an idea of how things should be. And if things go against how he thinks things should be, he starts to freak out. And he doesn't really take into account like what it means for the other people in the situation.
Free will.
Well, I mean, free will's kind of an ongoing theme of this episode, honestly. Like it's kind of like the undercurrent of the whole thing. And so like, you know who doesn't respect free will? Cory.
Yeah,
not respecting what his friends are actively telling him, not respecting what his girlfriend is being like, hey, it's cool, like they got it. Like he's just not listening to anyone, which is super frustrating.
And again, I think what's interesting to me is how much the story paints this as noble, as it's like, no, I'm just going to say, for the history of Boy Meets World, Cory's insistence upon something is supposed to be seen as endearing. It's supposed to be like, oh, look, he knows that they're going to work out at the end. He knows that Shawn and Angela are meant for each other. He knows that him and Topanga are meant for each other. So he has the right to kind of force it. And it just goes back to that whole kind of thing that we all grew up with like Nice Guys, where it's like, no, that's stalking. It's the Urkel and Laura thing, where it's just like, no, you guys don't understand. Harassment. It's the Ross and Rachel thing, where it's like, it's supposed to be sympathetic because he knows that they're meant to be. So he has the right to just kind of force that until everyone else gets on his side. And it's like, that's not the case.
We saw that shown in a very inappropriate way with Cory at the Disney episode, where he's like literally like diving in like a tank with sharks to get Topanga's attention while she's actively trying to ignore him. Like, he just doesn't take no for an answer.
And here's the thing, not taking no from an answer is why we have problems with men being in the same shower room as women. It's because if you're saying this lesson of, if you know that these people are supposed to work out, or if you believe in your heart of heart that this is something that's meant to be, you have the right to pursue it, despite what anyone else, including the other person, is saying. And that's just it's just one of the things that like I see now and I can't ignore.
Totally. Okay, so all right, I have a question for you, because all right, so yeah, there's the whole rubber band scene, and they do the whole thing where Cory figures out that they're broken up, and he kind of talks to Angela about it. Angela says to him, let's not kid ourselves. You and I were never really friends to begin with. What is the catalyst for Cory's behavior? Is it Shawn and Angela broke up, I gotta fix this, or what do you mean we were never friends to begin with? What do you mean you don't like me? Like, the episode can't decide what's the motivating factor. And so I'm trying to figure out.
No, I'm going to say right now, like again, I'm looking at his actions. His actions. His actions. And even his words, for the most part, is, oh, how does she not like me? Like, the conversation that he has, the gifts that he gives, everything is about, how could she not like me? How could she not think that I'm an important person in her life? Like, it's not even about really being a friend. It's like, I want the title of friend. And if I have the title of friend, that's good enough. Like, in his head, because if we're going to be honest, I think in Cory's real head, if he thinks about it, Cory doesn't have friends. He has Shawn, and he has Topanga, and he had Angela, and that gave him one more friend. And if he doesn't have Angela, then he has one less friend, because Cory doesn't have a lot of friends. We know that. We see that.
He doesn't have a lot of friends, and you're right. What's funny is that he says to Topanga, he goes, how can she not like me? I'm Cory. As if to say, like, I'm the main star of this whole thing. So as if to not like Cory means that, like, oh, wow, someone doesn't like something about me. I just need to talk to them. I just need to figure it out. Like, if they just got to know me better, I can prove to them. And it's just like this needy thing that I've never really seen from Cory before, which was...
No, we've totally seen Cory's...
Well, yeah, I guess you're right. You're right, yeah.
But I think what's interesting is this idea of, I'll say this, I have met guys like this who were like, what do you mean you don't like me? Everybody likes me. And I was like, well, I don't. Plain and simple. Like it's just like, you're allowed to not like people. You're definitely allowed to not like people who insist that you like them. And I think it's very important for people to understand that one of the best ways to get people to not like you is to insist that they like you.
I will say this, in terms of like the show trying to teach lessons that you learn through life, especially when you're like young, in your early 20s, out of high school, like, learning to be okay with someone not liking you is something that you kind of have to learn. Like, I'm okay with Cory learning this lesson if it was a lesson that he had to learn. But That's not this episode. What's
That's
this
not this
episode
episode.
is them like suggesting, oh, maybe Cory should learn to not care about what everyone thinks about him. No. He cares extra hard and he's gonna make you care. It's just a different way of going about the story.
Exactly. Like, you know what? It reminds me of for those of you who watched Recess, there's an episode of the show Recess, which is a children's show, by the way, where
Great
the
show.
main character, TJ, finds out that one of like the side characters that we always see doesn't like him. And he goes out of his way and he does the very same thing where it's like the entire episode is him trying to make someone who has stated that they don't like him to like him. And he goes above and beyond. He changes this dude's world. He does everything that he can to make this guy have like the best experience possible. And the guy's still like, I still don't like you. And by the way, that's okay. And he just walks away. And it's just like, yeah, that is, as you said, if that was the lesson of this episode, I would be like, you know what? That's a good lesson to learn. Sometimes you're not going to get along with it. Sometimes you can be friends with someone because they are in a relationship with your friend, and you have to learn to let go. That's a lesson.
That's a lesson.
Hey, we were all cool, but you're not together anymore. And as much as I like you as an individual, I'm not going to see you as often because I'm more loyal to this person who I've known longer or better. Again, that is a college lesson.
Totally.
But they don't take that route.
Because like as an adult, you know that when like, especially when you're friends with a couple, when they break up, there's a divorce that happens. Like their friends get divided, and like that's a part of it. So like that could have been like a really cool thing for them to touch on too, about how like, no, it's like I'm gonna hang out with Topanga, but like this is like there's no reason for me to be friends with you, Cory. Like that could have just been a way more interesting thing, or just learning the lesson of, oh, I think of this person as a good friend, but they don't think of me as a good friend, which is another kind of interesting lesson to learn as well. So there's just a bunch of different ways they could have gone about it.
I do like that the show does include like a little scene of Topanga being like, Cory, what have you done with Angela?
Yes.
Like
calling him out on it.
Me and Topanga's like, me and Angela do stuff. We're friends. Shawn and Angela did stuff. They were a couple. What have you done? Name one scene where it was just you and Angela.
Yeah. And like calls him out on it and just being like, hey, when have you ever pulled her aside and just had a conversation? Like even when the four of us hung out, you guys would never talk directly. And that's like almost kind of like I wish they would have kind of pinpointed on that more. Maybe Angela just being like, hey, there was times I tried to reach out to you, but you were just so busy with what you had going on that like it didn't really feel like you wanted to be my friend. Like that would have been something cool to throw in there.
Absolutely. And so, okay, we're getting into the part that I really I've been waiting to talk about. There are two things that are happening. One, this idea that Cory comes into Angela's room and is like interrupting her piece. Girl is in college trying to study, and Cory is in there again, almost harassing her, sending her balloons and flowers and all,
trying to buy the friendship.
Trying to buy the friendship, and she's just like, Angela's not about it, and she knows what it is. She knows the realness of it.
He's like, remember when we studied for that test together? She goes, no, no, I do not. When did we ever study for a test together?
But then also what I'm thinking during this scene is Cory is so oblivious because he's not really seeing.
No.
He's like, how are you okay with this? And it's like, she's clearly not. Like anyone who was paying attention can see that Angela is hurting, but you can't see that because you're too obsessed with getting her to like you, which is why I said that his actions say that this is more about him not being liked than it is about her. Because if you look at her, Cory's not blind. When he sees his friends are in real pain, he can also be like, oh, no, I see that you're hurting. But he doesn't. He's just like, how can you keep telling me that A, you're not my friend, and B, you don't want to be with my other friend? This is very self-centered.
Well, you know what, Siege? Here's something you haven't considered. Because Cory and Angela, they found out how Stella got her groove back together.
Oh my God. She was like, what have we done together?
What have we done? Well, we saw that Black movie that one time.
Okay. So now I said we're entering into the territory where I knew y'all was going to be like, because what y'all don't understand is they could have named any movie at all. There are so many really iconic movies, but for Cory to be like, we watched that one black movie together. I understand why Angela was like, you know what? I'm leaving the room.
Yeah, because I guarantee you, it wasn't a movie that those two saw together. The group of them went to the movies. It was Angela's turn to pick the movie. She picked that one, and he considered that, oh, that was me and Angela's time.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly. It's just one of those things where it's like, if the only movie of the only thing that you can think that we've done together was I chose movie night and it was a black movie, and you were like, oh, that was impactful. It's ingrained in my head. I was just like, okay, you know what? We're splitting hairs here. It is what it is.
he is so down, my brother.
Again, I do love her for that. I do love her for that. But the second part is, so Angela's like, I'm gonna go take a shower because it's the one place that I know you won't bother me. And again, they paint it kind of like, oh, he goes in there for the sake of the friendship. It's like, no. He goes in there because Cory refuses to lose this argument.
He refuses to take no for an answer.
He refuses to take no for an answer. So
Also,
much so.
Hey, I'm sorry, quick point. Has this dude not taken a shit since he's gone to college? Like,
I mean, like he's clearly gone to like some other campus bathroom. Like I get that. But I was like, there are two things in this moment. There were two really, really important things that I wanted to talk. One, the idea that they use his kind of persistence as a way to motivate him to go into the bathroom. So all of this could be seen as just a storyline to get Cory into the co-ed showers. Like that was the real triumph of the episode. And you're like, I know that that's not what's written, but in a way, that's kind of how the story is made out. It's like, oh, by the way, Cory got something out of this too.
Well, I would venture to say that Cory's kind of the only person who gets something out of it, because even when him and Angela, and we'll kind of get into their conversation, when they kind of hug it out, I'm still not thinking that Angela's walking away like gaining anything. She's oh, well, I guess we'll try out this trial friendship and see how it goes, even though I'm communicating to you that every time I see you, it reminds me of my ex, and that's like harmful to me and hurtful. We can see where this goes. Like, I don't think that she's walking away with more. I think that the only person walking away with more is Cory Matthews.
The only person walking away with what they want is Cory.
Yeah.
And that's very clear. So there's that. But then, okay, I want to talk about this for a little bit. This is where the part was like, they're going to feel very strongly like I'm reading into this. Angela is in a towel during this scene.
The entire time.
And at this point in time, Topanga is constantly covered up. And I just thought it very interesting how quickly and how easily they were willing to show Angela's body and kind of sexualize Angela's body, but how conservative they're making Topanga's body. And that's not to say that maybe Danielle Fishel was like, maybe there's like a difference on what the two actors were willing to do. But at the exact same time, I was like, there seems to be this kind of like,
this is an interesting point. Hey, you bring up an interesting point. And I have to say, it's a thought that I had as well. Not to say that Angela in the towel is any, like, it's actually kind of a conservative way to like wear a towel, I would say, if you were wearing a towel to cover your body. But to have this follow a scene earlier where someone's towel got pulled off and they were completely naked underneath. And I'm just like, oh, you're right. Like, Topanga's been the main love interest. And even on that prom night, I don't think we saw anything even close to that. So it's just interesting how, you're right, how, like, if they're going to sexualize, well, would in all fairness, Rachel has been wearing towels and things like this.
But again, what did we say? All I said was there's Rachel, who is at this point in time a sexual object.
Yes.
Then there is Topanga, who at this point in time is so
purity,
like, covered up, purity, and all this other stuff. And all I was saying is, first of all, literally the moment that Shawn and Angela break up, she is no longer sacred. She's no longer in that role. So we can show some skin. This just You
Interesting.
get where I'm going with this? And again, I'm not saying that this was intentional. I just noticed that this was a moment where we were willing to kind of show and sexualize Angela in a situation that did not need to be like her being in the shower is one thing, but like she could have been wearing a robe. She could have been
She
wearing
was wearing a robe when she walked in.
yeah.
She remember
Like so yeah, my whole thing is why is she now in a towel? Why is this moment the moment that she's in a towel? And when it's very clear that everyone else, like the situation with the other guy earlier in a towel is implied. This one actually just shows every other character is very conservatively dressed. Guys are wearing shorts in the shower, like
Yes.
all of that. The only person who's implied naked outside of the guy whose towel was removed and we didn't see anything is Angela. And I just thought that was something that I wanted to talk about.
I mean, you're bringing up a great point. I was kind of curious. This is season 6, and I was trying to look online to figure out when this episode aired in terms of like their time slot because it kept moving around TGIF so much where sometimes they were like 8:30 and then they would move to 9 to 9:30. I'm just like, what time do you have to be to throw a girl in a towel? Like, that's not an 8:30 episode. That's like a 9:30 episode, right?
I think you're right.
I have to say I don't really have a whole lot else to say about this.
I have one more thing to say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just to say that I got upset because I was like in an episode where Cory realizes he knows nothing about Angela. We learn nothing about Angela.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you brought this up because, like, part of me was like, oh, we haven't had an Angela episode since we got introduced to Angela during the whole, like, mystery girl purse storyline. So it was just like, oh, well, like, if they're going to use this to, like, hey, the parents are gone, we're in college, she's like a student here, she's part of the main cast, like, let's flesh out her story. Like, if it were that, and if that's where this is going, then that's great. But to your point, we don't learn anything about her. It's just really a tool to show how uncomfortable Cory is with not being liked. And I mean, even in that last scene, he's like, oh, Shawn is crazy to lose someone like you. And she's like, bruh, you don't know me. And he's like, but I could if you give me a chance. And it's like, why are you fighting for this?
Well, not only that, but like that would like again, you don't know me. That would have been a great time for him to be like, I know that you like raspberries on your pancakes. I know that you only use black ink because you don't like blue. Like something where it's like, oh, actually, I do know you. Or
like I helped Shawn buy this gift for you, and I know that you like this. Like just something to just be like
something.
You as an individual mean more to me than you as Shawn's counterpart.
Or she could have asked some questions. Well, like, help me get to know you. What other movies do you like? Where do you like to eat? What's your favorite color? All of the things that you do when you're actually trying to get to know somebody.
And in all honesty, Cory found the same purse that Shawn did. He knows exactly who this girl is. Like, he could have thrown a Van Damme ticket. He could have thrown out like any of the candies that she had, like just something.
Something that implies that you actually know them. And again, the only thing that we learn about her is that she's actually not over Shawn. And it's like, first of all, that is not a huge revelation. But second of all, that's nothing about her. like that's it's really, really upsetting because if what you're trying to explain for Cory is that there's a separation between Angela in a relationship with Shawn and Angela as an individual, you should have something be about her, the individual.
Yeah.
Not the one thing that we learn about her as an individual is that she prefers to be in the couple with Shawn.
And to your point, and like I mean, it's been a while since I've watched season 6, but I think the friendship that develops between Cory and Angela is solely one that comes from, I know that she has the secret and she doesn't talk to Topanga about it. So this can be our thing that we chat about. So even though she said, like, every time I see you, I think of Shawn, our friendship is going to be solely based on the fact that, like, hey, I know you still have feelings for Shawn, which just feels like she's not getting anything out of this. So it feels unfair to her as a character, especially when you said we had such an excellent opportunity to get to know her character better. So
last little bit of note, I will say that as this storyline ends, I do like how we had talked earlier about the bathroom issue, and it's just so weird how like it's become such a political and touchy subject. But in 1998, they addressed the fact that Topanga was like, yeah, before you know it, they'll be putting these in everyone's houses.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like that it's one of the things where it's like we've made it into a bigger deal than it needs to be, because this is just like any other bathroom that you've ever been into. So yeah, I just thought that was very interesting. Okay. B storyline. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. The B storyline, we have Feeney joining a college
For a
apparently
day.
for a day, even though this man clearly has a degree already. He's taking an intro course or something. I don't know. And what I liked about this B storyline was that I liked pairing Feeney with Rachel. I thought that was kind of fun.
I did.
This episode, like, they tried to pair Cory and Angela, and they tried to pair Feeney and Rachel. And even though like those relationships didn't have like a lot of moments where it built like a strong relationship between them, it was nice to see them toy around with like different dynamics, which was cool.
I will say, like, to your point, I feel like the B storyline, even though it's very quick and it kind of doesn't make sense in the totality, works better. Like the idea of, first of all, the idea of Eric being like, I've moved on, I've accepted that Feeney isn't here. And then Eric is really fun in this episode.
There's so many funny parts in this. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a question only Feeney would know. Are you George Feeney? Like,
Rachel says, that does look like the guy from the poster by your bed. So funny.
Again, it's showing history. It's showing that these people have a life outside of just what we see.
And it was also nice to see Rachel as not just a sex object, as like a student, as like a college student. Like Feeney was saying, hey, you're super smart. You're so prepared. Like, we learned things about Rachel, that she's a good student. And like, she's like all of these things that don't have to do with the way she looks, which was really interesting.
Exactly. And that's what and then also the idea of Feeney meeting. Like, they don't do that thing where it's just like, oh, it's just assumed that you know each other. Like, no, Feeney meets Rachel for the first time. She gets to be excited. She doesn't, because
so
she
excited
doesn't
to
know.
Be Eric's grandpa.
Exactly.
He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Eric goes, maybe one day, maybe someday.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, for her to kind of have like both that newcomer viewpoint on the whole situation, to be like, oh, clearly you're Eric's grandpa.
Yeah.
And Feeney's like, no, I'm just the neighbor. But then at the exact same time, Feeney could have enrolled into any school, into any class.
Yeah.
He definitely looked up Eric's schedule.
There's no way that you're randomly together with someone you know that well in college. Believe me, you have to like. I remember trying to get courses with my friends. It's hard. Like, it's
exactly
difficult.
So Feeney absolutely looked at Eric's schedule and did this as a surprise, and it's fine or whatever. But I really enjoyed, as you said, the different dynamic and seeing Feeney get to be a student for a little bit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I was like, hey, because this dude is still dressed exactly the same. So is this an issue where like, hey, we didn't want to give him more wardrobe, or this is in support to our overall theory that he cannot go into a classroom without dressing like this?
Absolutely. And I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. I feel like it does fit what they were trying to say, which is that Feeney has this kind of like, he just has this habit that he's been doing for years, and so he doesn't know any other way of being.
Sure.
And I think that's smart of you to even notice the wardrobe. And then they do, like, I'll say, like, one of the things that they let Feeney be a little more free with is he clearly has interest in the teacher, like, right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And Eric's like, down boy. Like, it's they're letting him be one of the boys,
Sure. Yeah. Which was fun. Like, I love seeing George like get excited about the dean and like him like having feelings, like just seeing him be a person. Like, we've never seen Feeney be anything other than a teacher. So to see him like have a love interest and that be introduced, also to be played by his real life wife, by the way, which is just amazing.
Exactly.
It's just a new dynamic to Feeney that we get to see that I think will help enrich his character past this, mentor figure for the kids.
I think what you said was really important. You said George, and I was like, it's good to see Feeney be George.
Yeah.
For a little bit. And I think that's great. I like the pairing off, as you said. I thought that was really fun. And again, Eric just being hilarious. But I want to say when we do the presentations and Feeney gives his reasoning, again, it really tracks that Feeney wants to be a good student. He's thinking ahead. He, wants to set a good precedent.
I love how he was like, no, Rachel, we got to go first. Teachers love the firsters. Like, inside scoop on this.
Exactly. Like, I think that was fun. But then when we have the moment of Feeney kind of like taking over the class, and then even I think what's interesting is they really do show how Jack and Eric's like, oh, way to suck up to the teacher. And Jack's like, he's not the teacher. And Eric's like, well, then why did you answer? And Jack's like, yo, like, why did I answer? Like, what am I doing? Like, it felt like everyone just kind of fell into their roles and everyone just kind of, and I thought that was very, very good illustration of the point that they were trying to make.
A classic Boy Meets World moment of Feeney being taught the lesson of just like, hey, you thought you could escape being in the classroom and not being a teacher, but it's just something that's a part of you. Classic Boy Meets World moment. I really loved it. One thing I just want to say real fast, because we kind of glossed over this a bit. Again, we don't really have a name for it. It's, we had our Turned On by Turner segment, and I keep saying that there needs to be a segment title for the Jack and Eric moments. Eric could have said, I want to be partners with Rachel. I call Rachel as my partner. But he's like, I choose Jack. And when Jack says why, he's like, because I didn't want you being paired up with Rachel. Thoughts?
Okay, no, you know me. I thought about it. Now I will say, to give y'all a little bit of break, I was so wrapped up in reading into everything else. I was like, this one is so like, this one can be very innocent. But that being said, it is also very much, it's a pattern of them being like, I'll say this. The way that George from the beginning was like, oh, nice to see you, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Matthews. Again, it's just like, oh yeah, y'all little couple. He didn't say who's your friend and like which one of you. No, George assumed, oh yeah, y'all little couple thing, and you got your little friend on the side. She's someone different. She's not part of this. That's why for me, when Eric chose Jack, A, it's funny, but B, you're right. It's like I just like I can't let go of the idea that in the show, in the writer's room, there's clearly something there, and they really do love that chemistry, and they really do love that pairing, and they just constantly want to put them together.
Yeah.
And you're like, if you were to just put them together, you would have even more storylines, but you're limited by your own limitations.
Yeah. It was just one of those moments where Eric could have chose Rachel and he chose Jack over Rachel, which is just kind of like in terms of how we've been reading into every episode. It's just been an ongoing theme, just a pattern. I have to say again, I loved Eric in this episode. I love, in conclusion, watches, chocolate, cheese. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you the Swiss. Amazing. Like
I loved you know what? This wasn't all me. Jack deserves the exact same grade. Done.
I also have to say that like in the history of the show, this episode has a moment that belongs in the best of clips, which is probably the greatest Feeney call in the history of the show. When Eric realizes that Feeney and the dean are trying to like get together, he's like, oh, it's so natural too. Like it was one of those things that didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like even something that they probably had in the script. It just felt like something that Will took and just went off with. And it's, again, the greatest Feeney call, so much so that this is the exact one I think they tried to replicate in Girl Meets World, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's that, and it's everything that you said. It's iconic, it's legendary, it's impactful.
Yeah.
But it also, as you said, it is natural. Like it felt like something that we as viewers have been waiting to see. Like
Yeah.
it just felt built upon in a way that you weren't like, oh, that came out of nowhere, but it was funny. It's like, no, this is actually totally fits everything I know about this dynamic. And so I really do enjoy that. I do want to say at post Feeney call that we didn't really talk about the lesson that the class was supposed to be talking about. Nature
It's
versus
definitely not about the
nurture.
Swiss.
Yeah. And the only reason why I want to bring that up is because I this is one of those where Michael Jacobs tiptoes into political thinking and you're like, oh, you're way more like the idea of starting off of can a criminal go back to his environment and actually change? And Feeney wanting to argue that he could, but the show being like, actually, environment plays a really big role, but not really expanding on the
Yeah.
nuance. It's just like it's one of those things where it's like, so is your argument that bad people are bad people? And there's nothing you can do without it. You can't go home if you're trying to better yourself. Like it's a very
Yeah.
complex issue. And in general, I'm like, I would have rather you not try to address this or not use that example
Totally.
if you were going to because this is like also when we're dealing with the three strikes rule. And so like just you can't escape the political environment that this comes out in if you touch on things like that, which is why I very much
100%.
I would have rather you not touched on it.
I thought the exact same thing because I was just like, oh, it seems like they're trying to make a good point here, but wait, what's happening right after? Just a little bit of backpedaling. So
which is
it was,
exactly what Boy Meets World does. It's like,
and
oh, but then we're gonna backpedal.
and then to the show's credit, maybe it's just trying to say that the answers are a little bit more nuanced, but the overall conclusion we're left with is that even Feeney was like, oh no, environment clearly had a massive, influence on my behavior. So,
exactly. Which again, it's like, I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying that it's a lot more complex than what the show made it out to be. And you can walk away from this being like, oh, I guess environment is definitely more of a determinant than anything else.
I don't know. We'll have to see. Honestly, it's hard to walk away with a clear understanding of what that lesson was. So
exactly. All
a
right.
little convoluted.
Speaking of which, do you have a Feeney lesson?
It seems to me that the Feeney lesson of this episode is you think you have free will. Is that right?
This is what I'm saying. Like that, there's like the lesson that the show actually is telling you, and then there's like, what is it trying to tell you?
Yeah, you think you can make your own choices, but actually the people and environment that you surround yourself in is going to force you into making decisions. And that's that. I don't know truly what am I supposed to understand from this. I mean, I think the thing that we're supposed to like touch upon is this idea that like I don't know, Cory says something to Angela like friendship is exactly what's going to get us through this, and I'm never ever going to go away. And I think we're supposed to take that as like a really sweet thing of just like, hey, standing by your friends through like different times and transitions, like standing by Feeney while he's transitioning. Like, I think that's part of it. But again, there's nothing clear enough to be like, this is the lesson. So I don't know. What do you think?
I was gonna say like if I had to pull at strings, I would say that we don't know ourselves or our friends as much as we think we do. There's still room to learn, is what I'll say. Like Feeney is still learning. Cory is still learning about Angela. Like we're still learning. And that would be like the gracious interpretation of this episode. But I feel, as you said, it's so much going on that there's no real lesson.
Yeah.
You have a bra moment.
Bruh moment. I think the bruh moment was Cory being like, "Hey, at least we saw that Black movie together."
I was waiting for you to say that. Yep.
I think that's the only one, right? Like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a few, but that's just the one that comes to mind.
That was the only one that I could really think of. I will say, like, if we're going to be fair, we don't necessarily like sexualizing characters for no reason. So the guy in the beginning where the towel is being removed, and I can definitely see that being just something where
that's
like,
kind of a bro moment. Just Shawn and Topanga just being like, "Whoa, that dick though." Like that's kind of like a weird thing to have in an ABC show. Sure, like
exactly. I was gonna say what's interesting to me about moments like that is I always notice in TV, you always have to imply that the person has a unique penis. You know what I mean? Like that's like it could be big, it could be small, whatever, but like everyone always is like, huh. Like whenever we imply that a dick has been seen, it's just like, okay.
Or it was like weird somehow or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it can't just be someone being like leaving the bathroom because penises are regular. Just, like you gotta be impressed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what grade are you giving this?
Honestly, I'm giving this episode a C plus.
Okay, you know what? I was gonna give it a B minus.
Okay.
As much as I broke it apart, I really enjoyed it. I really thought, which was very rare, I thought the B storyline worked really well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like whenever you have like a good B storyline, it actually improves the episode a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of thoughts I have on this episode. Do you have any good homework do you want to recommend?
So because I had been listening to my homework from last week, which was Too Scary Didn't Watch, I have been getting into certain things a little bit more. And so I watched both the Predator movie from like 1987, I think it is, and Prey, the sequel.
I just started it and I fell asleep in the first 10 minutes and I have to watch the rest of it.
You gotta watch it all over again.
I can't wait to watch it, but no spoilers, please.
I'm just no spoilers. I really enjoyed myself. I thought Prey was a really good movie. I was someone who was like, well, do I have to watch the first one? And like, well, just to get some of the idea. And it's like, okay. So I watched the first one. I had so many thoughts about the first one.
Is it worth rewatching? Like for my wife,
you know what? It is. I'll say it's worth rewatching. But it's also, I will say that without giving too much into it, it's really funny because when you watch the first one, there's all this emphasis on like 80s masculinity.
Sure.
And Prey kind of takes it in a different direction, but it still gives you a great movie and you still get all the points that you want. So I don't know. I just thought
you could watch it as a standalone though, right?
You could watch it. Like my fiance didn't watch the first one with me. He just watched the second one. So you absolutely can. So that's my recommendation.
Well, my recommendation for homework, guys, I saw the Orphan sequel movie that came out.
Nope, won't do it. We just talked about this.
I'm telling you, watch this movie. If you saw the original Orphan movie, did you see the first one?
No, of course I didn't. But again, this is what
I'm begging you. I'm begging you to watch this movie because they're not like the twist of this movie. I was like, they did it again. These motherfuckers found a way to twist and turn me in a way I did not see the story going. And I just have to say that, like, for like a movie that's so ridiculous, a 30-year-old woman playing a 10-year-old girl, it's the most ridiculous
for the first
thing.
One, you didn't watch it.
Well, I mean, you could tell when you see the trailer that is an adult woman playing a child. They make very little attempts at making her look younger. It's all works. It all works, and I just highly recommend it.
Okay, I will not watch it, but again, this is an episode for Too Scary to Watch for me to check out.
Honestly, yeah, because it's honestly the story alone that's just it's out of control.
I love that. Kind of wrapping up, we watched Ready or Not again last night, and I just like that movie. I feel like it's a really good. I really enjoyed it, and I will say, like, I feel that horror is almost always telling more interesting and compelling stories.
Yeah.
Because it's always trying to change the genre, whereas certain other genres feel like they kind of have to stick to the status quo.
The template. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think that's pretty much it. Anything else?
No. Check us out at Brummies World on all the other platforms you've been listening to. We love you guys. We
love you.
Keep giving us that feedback. Are you ready to dream?
Try.
And do good.
Do good, guys. Do good. All right. Later, bruh.
Later.
When this boy meets world.